Okay. All right. So we are here as part of the Room Enough for Both project that we are doing. We being Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress, the Pace Land Use Law Center, Hudson Valley Estuary Program, and the Hudson Valley Alliance for Housing and Conservation. This is a pilot project where we're trying to help New Lebanon integrate its planning for both housing and conservation, instead of doing those two things separately and sort of letting them duke it out at the end of a planning process. We think it's better to integrate that planning, understanding that healthy communities have ample supplies of both affordable housing for people to live and also open space for things like recreation, agriculture, water supply protection, climate change adaptation, other things like that. So that's why we're here today. We are here as part of something that I previewed in May when we got together for our first community meeting, which was that as part of this project, we were going to take the time to meet with some developers from across the region of different sizes, different scales, for profit, nonprofit. As New Lebanon's getting ready to go into a comprehensive planning update, we thought it would be good for the community to hear sort of what's going on in the development world, how developers are making decisions about where they choose to build housing and where they don't, and some of those factors that may play a role in New Lebanon's decision making vis-a-vis policy and zoning and other things of that nature. So we're going to start with some very, very quick introductions. I then have a couple questions to go through with our special guests, and then we'll open it up to the committee for this project in case anyone has questions that go into a little more detail than the ones I had planned. So just going to start with quick introductions. We'll do it alphabetically, which means Al, we're starting with you. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I think I know just about everyone on the call here. I'm Al Valencia. I'm the Chief Executive of Columbia-Greene Habitat and have had the pleasure of working in New Lebanon for a number of years, and it's near and dear to my heart. So thank you for inviting me in on this conversation.
Thanks, Al. Faith, you're up to bat next.
Hi, I'm Faith Moore. I am the Senior Vice President of Housing Programs and Solutions for RUPCO. My umbrella includes two of our subsidiaries in Orange County and Sullivan County, as well as Sullivan County Land Bank. And I always say the end solutions part is anything else that's assigned to me by our CEO. I'm really honored to be here to talk to you guys today about housing development and be alongside Al and Sean, and excited to talk to you guys.
Great. And then we'll go through folks from the committee, starting with Tistria. Go ahead, Tistria.
Hi, I'm Tistria Hoetling. I am the town supervisor in the town of New Lebanon and really excited to be working with this committee and these amazing professionals that know a lot more about this stuff than I do.
Great. I somehow skipped Sean. Sean, go ahead.
Thought you were mad at me, Adam.
No, 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 no.
Sean Kearney from Kearney Realty and Development Group, family-owned operated business. We focus mainly on mixed income and affordable for rent developments throughout Hudson Valley, New York State, and we have done some affordable home ownership as well. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, Sean. Peg, go ahead. You go next.
Hi, I'm Peg Munvies, co-chair of the Conservation Advisory Council in New Lebanon, and some of the things that we're very interested in all this. We're doing a big source water protection plan. We're doing a lot of testing. We're just got getting into a feasibility study on wastewater, which is basically water centric and water quality centric. So we're jumping in with that, and we're 2 years into that process and just jumping into the comp plan. So very interested in what's going on here.
Great. Ted, you're up next.
Hi there, I'm Ted Salem, and I'm on the zoning board, and I'm the chair of our comprehensive plan committee.
Great. Josh, you're up next. Oh, you're on mute, Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh. I run a small grocery in downtown New Lebanon, and I'm on the planning board and work with Peg on potential municipal water and wastewater.
Great. And then two of my partners in planning, last but certainly not least. Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm Chris Brown, Housing Development Coordinator for the county, Director of Operations of the County Land Bank, and Vice President of the Trillium Community Land Trust. And I think I've worked with everybody on here except for Sean, but that's coming.
And then if your name begins in Z, you go last. Go ahead, Tiffany, you're up last.
Always last, but Tiffany Zazula, Deputy Director of the Land Use Law Center. I do know all of you on this call, and happy partner in this project. So looking forward to the conversation.
Great. And I'm Adam Bosch. I'm President and CEO at Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress, sort of working with Tiffany and others to lead this and help with the community planning process. So I want to start with, so from our friends from the housing development world, I want to start with a pretty simple question, but I think it's an important one for communities to think about, especially communities that are getting ready to update a comprehensive plan, which is, can you sort of take us behind the decision-making curtain about how developers nowadays are making decisions about, where they look to build housing, where they don't look to build housing? What are some of the things you look for when you're making that decision about where, how you're choosing one place over another when you're deciding to build? Faith, you want to about lead off on that one, Faith?
Sure. If Kevin was here today, he would really be saying, and he said it today at our community lunch, is that we don't work in communities, we work with communities, right? So that's really the number one thing, is a community that really wants housing. Infrastructure obviously is foundation to be able to build any type of housing. Infrastructure is really important to make sure that there's access to water, sewer, roadways, that type of stuff. Proximity to amenities. Josh, I heard you say you own the grocery store, so that's a great thing. We want to make sure that people have availability to be able to get stuff that they need. Zoning and approvals, being able to, as I said, work with communities, that really helps out a lot as well, because, community matters.
Great. Thanks, Faith. Al, you want to take this one on? What do you look for when you're making a decision about what places to go versus another?
Yeah, and it may be a simple question. It's not a simple answer, especially for us. So let me just take a step back and explain how habitat works and why it may be different from what my answer may be different from what Faith will say or Sean. One, we are focused solely on home ownership. We don't do rentals. We don't do multifamily. We're, single family home ownership. That's been the foundation of the habitat model, and that stays the same. So we are really focused on, a very specific niche of the mosaic of housing options that all communities need. So to echo what Faith said, we also require first and foremost community support. We don't come in and buy up a plot of land and just, say we're going to build here and then sort of do battle with communities who may not want us. We really want to be invited in as part of an overall plan or need. Again, because we know we can't address, the panoply of housing needs of a community, only one small section. So within that, we have to operate where, by policy, we sell our homes for no more than 30% of a qualified applicant's income. So what does that mean in reality? It means may take us $300,000 to build a house, but we can't sell it for any more of what the applicant will qualify for a mortgage for at 30% of their income. So everything we build has some kind of subsidy or some kind of gap that we need to fill. In the traditional habitat model where we're building a house at a time in a lower cost environment, that limited us to being able to build a house every year or two, because we recycled our own capital and had to fill our bucket every time we looked to build. We have changed that development model. So, we have, and as I presented to the town board a couple of years ago, we have this new model called the Rural Starter Home Initiative, where we have, developed a new energy efficient starter home model that we can build and price at a target subsidized price that the average wage worker or the median earning resident in Columbia and Greene counties can afford. So with that being the sort of foundation of what we're looking to do, economically, we are looking to build in small clusters of homes because that's the financing incentives that are available that we can tap into through New York State. At least they're available now. We don't know what will be available in the future, but we are looking to be able to build what makes sense for most rural communities in our service area, which are infill clusters for 6 homes at a time in locations where there's one, community support. We don't necessarily need infrastructure. We would certainly love it. It would bend the cost curve down further, but our model will
Yeah.
we're able to incorporate our pricing with using independent well and septic. So in terms of how the communities we're working with, we're asking them to look at models of housing that they're looking, to introduce into their community and design their zoning codes to allow the greatest latitude in the types of housing they're building. We need, larger scale rental developments that are mixed use and that are targeted towards various income strata as well as demographic strata. We need single family homes. We need, a mix of commercial and residential opportunities. And the communities need to look at their zoning and see what allows for that and what doesn't, and how to adjust it to incorporate a mix that the community feels that they can support. So within that context, we know that we're a small, we could play a small but significant part because we don't ask for tax subsidies. We don't ask for rebates. The houses we build go on on the tax rolls. One of the things we are in discussions with the communities that we're having conversations with is there's been new tax legislation passed in the last session that'll come online in January 1st that will allow municipalities to adjust the taxation for subsidized affordable homes so that a discount can be applied to the tax rate that will make the homes more affordable in a rising tax environment for a longer period of time. So that's one of the only specific asks, other than the ability to build clusters that fit within the community that not all zoning ordinances allow for now.
So Al, I'm going to come back to something that you and Faith both said in a minute to put some more detail to it, but I want to bring Sean into the conversation. Sean, you're looking at a pretty big set part of New York now. You're in pretty much all parts of New York. How are you guys making decisions about where you build and where you don't build? Are there a certain set of factors that you're almost always looking at?
Yeah, it's a great question, and like Al said, it's a difficult answer, but Faith touched on it as well. Infrastructure is a big part of it. Having water and sewer, we've built in areas without common water or sewer. It's extremely difficult. I don't advise, at least for our product, which is typically multifamily, anywhere north of 50, 60, 70, 80 units, or mixed use development. So infrastructure is extremely important. But beyond that, I was just doing some math in my head. 3 out of the 6 projects we have under construction now were either RFPs issued by the local community, or we were contacted by the community. They reached out to us, they did tours of our properties, they like our model, and they invited us to come, showed us some of the vacant property that they have or underutilized property. So Adam, we're up by Buffalo, up by Lake Placid, by Utica, where really our core was the Hudson Valley. Each one of those communities were up there because we were invited up there. And it goes a long way to what Al was saying. If that community support is there from the community leaders, zoning is important, but that's not a threshold if the will is there. And the goals of that community and their leaders are aligned with our goals.
So Sean, that's actually the piece I wanted to pivot on, that Al and Faith, but I'm going to give you the first stab at this. community support can mean a lot of different things, right? That could mean the town board inviting you in for a chat to look at opportunities. It could mean, making public land available. It could mean 100 different things, right? So when you say community support in particular, Sean, what does it mean to you? And I'm going to ask Al and Faith the same thing. What is the details of what community support means?
Yeah, it takes a bunch of different forms. In a perfect world, it means a community wants the model of housing that we do. They want a mixed income model. They want rentals. The community, the municipality has vacant land that the municipality actually controls and wants to sell it, wants to issue an RFP. That's in a perfect world. But there are situations where the community doesn't have land, but they still contact us, reach out to us, say we support it. We don't know what to do. We're community leaders. We're not developers. And then it's our task from that point to pick it up, find the property, find the seller, come to an agreement, and take it through local entitlement. So the support can take a few different forms, from the most extreme, as this is municipality land and they're kind of shepherding this project through, to just being engaged in the process, supporting the model and getting the word out about it and being proponents of it.
Faith, kind of turn to you, community support from your standpoint as a nonprofit developer. I mean, what is it? What is that form does that take?
Yeah, so and I think and I really love the fact too that Sean is multifamily developer, all that he does, and Al's like this single family home, right? And that's what he's doing. And I feel like what we do at RUPCO is a little bit of everything, right? So we have our real estate development department that does these multi-family units. A lot of my stuff is focused on the single family creation of homes and building. But I think there's a lot of answers for this, and it really depends on the community and where we are and what kind of projects we're doing. I think there's willingness to listen is community support, because understanding that we are in a housing crisis and we need more units of housing for people. Willingness and readiness to collaborate and to, like I said, listen, but then also collaborate. Energy, because you want it to be there. You want to see housing. You want more people in your community. And really just residents and neighbors want to see change and have solutions, instead of just the same old and not in my backyard. Like, yes, we need housing, but I don't want it here. So I think a lot of that is great ways.
Okay. And Al, for you, community support, I assume, is some version of what Faith and Sean have already said, but your model might be a little different on what community support means.
Well, again, there's many facets to it, but I'm going to actually steal a page from you, Adam. And I think the first thing that I look at when I'm approached or we're looking at something is, what's the mindset of the community?
Yep.
And so, I mean, are you a community that wants to make something happen and has said, we understand we need housing, and so we want to have a conversation that starts with what can we make possible, rather than what are we looking to not do, or what are we looking to prevent. And I think that that's two really different mindsets, especially for any developer. What are we walking into? I mean, are we exploring possibilities to get something done, or are we, you trying to fit, a square peg in a square hole, and each of us have a different shape that we're working with. So, I think first and foremost, it's that. So, if you start from the mindset that the community really wants to make something happen and is interested in learning and working together collaboratively, then that's the best possible path to start from.
I think I have three more quick questions before we open it up. I'm going to, again, pivot on this community support thing. This is a town that is going to be in the near term looking to update its comprehensive plan soonish. And I'm curious, community support through an update in a comprehensive plan. I mean, listen, we're all, this is kind of an assemblage of nerds here on the Zoom. We can talk about zoning. We can talk about lot sizes when a community is updating its comp plan. And I also want to acknowledge, like, Sean is here to be helpful. His scale might not be the scale for New Lebanon, right? But he has advice to give. Al's might be, Faith's might be. Sean's group might start doing, smaller scale rural stuff at some point in the future. Who knows? But I want to hear from each of you, regardless of the scale you work at, through a comprehensive planning process, vis-a-vis things like zoning and lot sizes, what are some of those things that communities can do to make it easier to build the kind of housing that's most in demand now? And I'll go in reverse order this time, Al. I'll start with you. You touched on this a little bit in your first answer, but through a comprehensive planning process, what's most helpful?
Um, to look at not only the land use pattern, but the economic realities, in that, not all sizes fit all needs. So you need a mix to be able to attract the type of development that the community ultimately decides it wants. And so the economics are going to be different for each development company or organization, and aligned with what they're going to be allowed to build. So I don't think, the conversations we have with communities and planning boards and zoning boards, that the economics are always as high up in the discussion level, because that's the reality. You're not going to get things built if the economics don't work for the developer. And that's why we see many communities who have the desire, but that aren't really looking at it, realistically. And well, you're going to lose too much money if you're a nonprofit, or you're not going to, make what you need to be sustainable as an organization. And communities have to realize that is that, housing's not certain housing, whether you want to call it affordable or whatever sort of adjective you want to put on it, is not being built because the economics aren't there in terms of what the developer needs to make it work. That's why you're getting, the larger scale, the larger price, the larger plot, because the economics work for the developer and the zoning works to allow that. And I think for most other development types, the zoning and economics don't work.
So Faith, I'll hop to you. Typical comprehensive planning issues that folks should be thinking about, related to housing. I think Al brings up a good point about some of the economies of scale that have changed over time on your end.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing that we're looking at in another municipality we've been talking about is making sure that there is some availability or flexibility is the word I'm looking for being able to do some adaptive reuse, and to also take a look at, there's one specific municipality that they're really looking at their zoning where it has always been, hey, this zone, you can only have commercial on the first floor and all of your residential has to be on the second or third floor. But it's not always the best case, right? Like, so it can work, but there can be residential on the first floor in some situations. So they're looking at that. Definitely more flexibility with adaptive reuse. We're seeing schools closed down, churches not being used, flexibility in their zoning to be able to do that. And planning for the next generation, right? Like, I know we're talking now that, school numbers are declining, but then like, what are we doing for our children and our grandchildren, and just planning for the next generation when you're looking at your comprehensive plan?
Sean, on your end, just things in a comprehensive plan, zoning, lot size, other things like that help.
Sure. Well, it all starts with the comprehensive plan. So I think it's important that the town is kind of clear on their goals in the comprehensive plan, because the first comprehensive plan, then comes any zoning updates to bring in line with the comprehensive plan. But if you have a project or single family home, anything, and it's not consistent with the existing zone, even post zoning update, and you want to rezone it or do an overlay, it still has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So I think it's pretty important to lay out those goals in each district. If this district you want more residential, you lay out why. If this district you want more affordable, if you want more home ownership, you lay out the goals pretty clearly for each district, because no one can plan for everything perfectly. Private, public, no one knows the future, and there's going to be changes needed down the road. But so long as your goals are clear in the comprehensive plan, it's helpful to make those adjustments in the future. And then I think zoning wise, we've seen a lot of municipalities have success with form-based code. It doesn't work well in all instances, but in a lot of municipalities, it's good because you sometimes municipalities can overzone properties with so many restrictions, right? Because there's a bit of hesitation. They're nervous about overdevelopment, setting lot sizes too small, dwelling units per acre too high. So they try to overzone and restrict it, where form-based code kind of takes a step back and says, let's look at the overall aesthetic, let's look at the community setting, the surrounding properties, let's make sure this development, however many units are in it, scale-wise and aesthetic-wise, it's consistent with the surrounding community. And that gives the municipality greater flexibility and control over like the character of the building, as opposed to how long the building is, how deep it is. So we've seen it allows for greater flexibility, and we've seen a number of successes using form-based code.
So there's a closely related question. I just have real quick answers on this one. I think everyone on this call may eventually be involved in the comp plan for the town, but especially Tishtri and Ted, this is important for them. We have seen some comp plans that include like design guidelines or aesthetic. Hey, we'd like to see you use these kinds of building materials. We like this kind of, sometimes people like brick or is that helpful for developers in the sense that you're not spinning your wheels trying to figure out for a year what the community wants the thing to look like, and that's kind of codified? Or does that constrain you in some ways that can be troubling? Sean, I'll let you bat lead off whether you tend to be helped by that or hindered by that.
Yeah, we usually see that pop up in like the form-based codes, right? Where it focuses less about like density per project, density per acre, more about your first floor has to have 50% transparency with windows, retail on the first floor, masonry, architectural cornices. It's helpful, right? Because then the board knows what to expect, you know what they expect, and there can be a clear understanding. So there's not an immediate massive disconnect between your application and what the board was expecting to see. No, it's helpful.
And I'll go to Faith, but I'll just say, like, Sean's mentioning one kind of architectural aesthetic, but it kind of does then allow you to tailor it to, hey, this is a small city or this is a rural town, and those aesthetics may be different, and the desire for building materials and looks may be different. And I think it's one of these strings you can pull on to not only make sure the scale is appropriate for your community, but the sort of aesthetic, the building aesthetic, and set that early so that we talk often with developers about certainty, right? Building certainty so that they're not spinning their wheels and spending hundreds of thousands on soft costs for more architectural and engineering work, I think is kind of why I'm asking this question. But Faith, same for you, knowing sort of the desires of the community up front, helpful or?
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think I have anything to add that Sean or you did not already just say. So let's see if Al has anything additional to add.
Yeah, Al, on the habitat side, maybe a little less flexibility, but
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. So the short answer you're looking for is yes and no.
Yeah.
I mean, we're building to a model, we're building to a cost because we're trying to hit a cost point for our demographic. And so it really will depend. I mean, if there's some aspects of the design that are for us cost prohibitive or will add to the cost and add to the amount that we have to subsidize, then they don't work. But I think on the flip side of that is we come into the community and say, this is what we're building, or this is what we're looking to build, and this is who it works for. That it gives the community clarity as well. So I think it works on both sides. Pluses
And Al's
minuses.
answer underscores something important, which is if you decide in your comp plan to go down this route of talking about what we want future housing to look like in our town or building materials we want, make sure you're bringing in developers to be part of that discussion so that you're not accidentally bumping up costs for folks like Al. And maybe there's some kind of circuit breaking mechanism you can use to say, hey, Habitat will work with certain organizations to make sure that there's some aesthetic that we like, but is within the cost constraints of certain developers. So I think that's an important piece. Last question before we open it up. Common constraints you face in developing housing. What are the things where you go into a community and go, oh, it's just going to be impossible here because of fill in the blank? Al, we'll go reverse order. What are the constraints that you sometimes run into that are avoidable, that that are made by humans and could be solved by humans that New Lebanon should be careful not to work into its processes and policies?
Well, all of them, because we're all human. I think that it's not all is realizing not everything's in municipal control. Some of it is the state, some of it is, either financing availability or environmental and some of the environmental reviews. So all of that plays in, and municipalities don't necessarily have any control over that. So I think that needs to be thought about as well. I mean, for us, the the single greatest factor is how do that we consider is what's the likely gap that we're going to have to fill in and what's available to do that. And so we work backwards from that in terms of looking at what the community is asking or allowing us to do, and then trying to figure out for the number of units we're going to build, what's the capital we have to go out and find above the mortgage that we're going to likely get to make that pencil out.
Got it. Faith, coming around to you, the common constraints where you go into a community and go, oh man, this community has this zoning or this rule or this policy, and it just makes it hard. Things to avoid.
Yeah. Well, long drawn out process, right? And funding gaps, cost of materials, cost of everything, and especially with that long drawn out process, it makes it even worse because we can look at a project right now and say, oh, this is what we're going to be able to build it for now. And then if it's going to take 2 years to get approvals, we see how things change around here in 2 weeks. So who knows what pricing is going to be in 2 years.
Okay, that's important. That's an important thing to think about. Sean, for you, things you go to a community, it's like, oh man, this is a constraint we can't overcome, things that you want to make sure folks avoid.
Yeah, I guess for us, it's really right off the bat, like before we step off a curb, would be the community support, right? If it's wavering, if it's not strongly there, we won't step off the curb unless there's a clear path. This is zoned as of right. There's a community need, whether local leaders support it or not. But once we step off that curb, kind of what grinds our gears a bit is if that support then wavers, right? We're 6 months, we're 12 months in, we've expended hundreds of thousands, some case millions, and then that community support for whatever reason starts to fade away or turn against you. That's one of the biggest I guess issues that we can see. But in the initial phase of reviewing a site, it's the one thing that would scare us away is if there's a lack of a community willingness or support.
And I'll double down on because we're involved through our Center for Housing Solutions enough in this for communities that are initially have open arms and then a year into the process, those open arms turn into fists. That reputation spreads fast. And the development world will know about that. And then it makes it really harder to try to get the next person to come to do a home rehabilitation project or a development project. So I think that's important to be consistent. I lied. One more quick question. Anything you've seen a deeply rural community do across the region or in the parts of the state you're working in that you go, man, that was smart and more rural communities should do that? Sean, anything come to mind on that?
I mean, infrastructure is big there, right? Infrastructure unlocks a lot. Even if your zoning is lagging behind, if a rural community, and I know it's extremely challenging, puts in sewer, right? Repipes downtown and maybe lays extra sewer lines for future capacity expansion. That kind of unlocks the door to a whole myriad of development opportunities in that community. Rezoning is great, but without that sewer, it's going to be limited, at least for larger scale or mid-scale projects. So when we see a community, and sometimes I know it can take decades, kind of unlock the infrastructure, it opens the doors to a lot.
Okay, Faith, a non-infrastructure item that you saw something a rural community did and you said, darn, that was smart, others should do it too?
Nothing that I can
Okay.
pinpoint right now.
Al, anything in your footprint where one of your communities did something really wise that you thought was worth replicating?
Yeah, get ahead of density in terms of thinking about How do we promote light density and clustering? There's some laws on the books that the state enacted a long time ago. Some communities embraced them early on, some communities haven't. But communities that have really thought about, where do we want light density, or where do we, and how do we make that happen? Have unlocked more housing opportunities than those that haven't.
Yeah, and I'll look to Tiffany here. I'm going off recollection, and if I'm wrong, it'll be in our final report. We'll make sure we get it right. But I think there is a clustering allowance in New Lebanon when we did the initial look through the zoning, right? Yeah, Tiffany's giving a thumbs up. I see Tistria nodding, Ted's nodding. Okay, so there is some of that in New Lebanon already. I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to ask the members of the committee, is there anything I didn't ask that as we're going through the rest of this project, as you're looking ahead toward the comp plan, that you just want to, ask these folks and be thinking about? You can raise your digital or human hand. There's a human hand, Tistria. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot community support, which is obviously important. A lot of the rural communities, I think, are kind of split and divided between, wanting progress and wanting to tackle issues that affect everyone, like housing, and the mentality of not wanting change and not wanting, the town to change. So I agree that you don't want to get partway through. We had that happen with sidewalks the first time they came up years and years ago. And it was like we were hundreds of thousands of dollars into the project, and then there was all this public opposition. So I guess my question is, do you have any tips or insight, either how to bring a community that might be divided together, or how to really ensure that, I don't know that you can ever guarantee that there's not going to be some voices in opposition, because I think no matter where you are and what you do, there's going to be some voices in opposition. But I think we're talking about a majority, right? And making sure that the majority is in support, even if there are some dissenting voices. So is there anything that you can guide in, like, planning or the comp plan, or, before we potentially start down a path with a partner, of really ensuring that community support is there, and that the voices that might be dissenting really are kind of a minority of the community?
Faith, I see you're unmuted. Go ahead, you first.
Yeah, thanks. Looking at this from another hat that I've worn in the past as deputy mayor in a municipality, one thing that I can say to that is people aren't necessarily always afraid of change. They're afraid of the uncertainty, and they don't understand, how is this going to affect me, or can you predict how this is going to affect my drive? Are there going to be more school buses? Like all of this different stuff. So what I can say to that is to get the community aware of what you're looking to do while you're doing it. And I know they all have something to say after the plan has already been made, and to somehow get it out there while you're making the plan and get their input so that they feel that they're vested, and that then that fear isn't really there, because you're not down the road a couple $100,000 because they had input. So I guess what I'm trying to say, all of that to say, like, do focus groups, get everything out there, use social media any way that you can to get their input.
Sean, you've been through this a fair bit. Anything to add to what Faith said?
Yeah, I think education's helpful, right? There's misconceptions, right? There's fear. You're 100% right. You're never going to convince everyone. Your goal is to get the majority, and I think education goes a long way. There's a lot of fear around change and new development, but I think understanding the benefits of development, understanding the benefits of density, especially in like a downtown area, what that can do to the tax base, what that can do to local businesses, traffic, safety, walkability. There's a myriad of benefits surrounding dense areas. And I think educating people on that will calm a lot of the rational fears. There will be some that will always be against it from more of an emotional base that it's tough to quell. And it's then down to the leaders or the boards at that time to understand the difference between those, right? Satisfy those with data and facts that have legitimate concerns, and understand which concerns are more emotional based and may not be able to be satisfied.
Yeah. Al, anything to add on this one?
Always. I think building upon what Sean said, I think, part of it is you can't look at opposition in sort of a monolithic way because it comes in various forms and for various reasons. So you really have to break that down. Where is it coming from? Is it just intransigence or is it a lack of understanding? And so I want to congratulate the town for going through this process. I mean, this is a terrific process and it should be a model for others. You're having these community conversations to educate and inform and to bring clarity to what is a really complicated process that most people who aren't in development don't really understand. And
Yeah.
so, I think that from a general standpoint, you know, the community development process is so ill understood by most of the stakeholder groups involved. And we're not educated or schooled or have the tools to really manage that process very well. So given that, the generalized approach has got to be over communicate. And so let people have their say. Everyone needs to have a voice, but not everyone's voice should have equal weight because part of it is, intransigence or, being ill-informed or, you know, fear-based. And I think that you need to really promote rationality. And I think, your process that you're involved in now is going to lead to a good place where the community is going to come and say, these are the parameters we find acceptable for the majority. And the political environment being what it is, the minority is never going to be satisfied. But if the majority will stay steadfast and the political leadership will keep reminding the community of why they chose what they chose, then it'll make it easier.
Yes, Trey, I wrote down three things really quick in response to your question. This concern underscores why you want to really make sure you have as many people come out for your comp planning process as possible. Because at some point you can say, no, 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 we agreed to this already. And if you didn't show up for the comp planning process when we advertised ton of time, had a ton of meetings, that's your problem. But that's why you really want to turn out a lot of people for your comp plan. Second thing is when those public hearings come around for some of those projects, make sure the community voices of support come out so that they're given equal weight and consideration because at too many planning board meetings, and I've sat through hundreds of them, it's only the folks who are against something that come out because opposition is a more powerful motivator than support. And then the last thing I wrote down was just start to practice how you make the economic argument. And that economic argument comes in the form of, hey, we'd like to see our school population equalize. Hey, wouldn't it be nice if this project put $1,000 extra in the till of the local business every month so that it stayed open in February when times get hard, right? Like start practicing what the different versions of that economic, discussion are because those are often times things people aren't thinking about. Chris has some ideas too. Go ahead, Chris. And then Tiffany.
There we go. Yeah, sorry. I think I've got a comment, an answer, and a question. I think in that order. So to Al's point about the things that local communities can do, especially rural communities, with their zoning and their comp planning, the point about finances, I think really can't ever be understated. If zoning was, there are things that municipalities can do with their zoning to make development easier, but if zoning was really your issue, you would have dozens of variances being applied for on a monthly basis. So it really just comes down to what you can get developed in your towns. And on that kind of, in that context, I wanted to answer the question about what else have local communities done besides build infrastructure. Shout out to New Lebanon for being the first of our communities to become pro-housing certified. So getting yourself lined up to access $750 million in state grant funds is a great move. And then I also want to shout out some partners that Faith and RUPCO is working with down at Red Hook. The density bonus kind of bank that Red Hook built up. Now it was over a certain amount of years, But that was a way that they could directly finance the acquisition of a parcel that is becoming, community farming as well as affordable housing. So on that line, I guess I have a question for both Faith and Sean. If more communities had readily available density bonus banks, for lack of a better term, would that significantly change the math for some of your like mid-sized developments, assuming there was infrastructure there already?
Faith, you want to go or you want me to go?
No, go ahead, Sean. You're unmuted already, so.
Okay. Yeah. So the question is, if a municipality has infrastructure and they also have like these density banks, will that kind of incentivize a developer? Just speaking for myself, I'd say if a municipality has infrastructure and they have zoning or willingness there to get to the finish line with zoning, that would be enough for me. Density bonuses or these density banks are great and helpful kind of tools in the toolbox. I use that phrase as always think the development process from a municipality standpoint, private process, it's like a toolbox, right? And all these little things are different tools that you can use, right? Whether it's incentive zoning, density banks, parking waivers, all these different things that kind of attract and incentivize development. So it wouldn't be like a threshold for me, but it would certainly be an attractive component.
Yeah, I agree. And that was actually what I was going to say. It's a tool in the toolbox, right? And you need your toolbox to build any type of housing. And I will, since we're talking about the Red Hook project, that does not have infrastructure. So that's actually something that, doesn't mean that just because there isn't infrastructure that a project cannot happen. And I think, again, it's all little pieces that come together to make the whole overall puzzle. But
Tiffany,
it helps.
Yeah, Tiffany, you had something to add to this? No? Okay, she's saying no. Any other questions from the committee while we have these folks here that you're interested in? Again, Zoom hand or human hand, it doesn't matter to me. I see a Peg human hand. Go ahead, Peg.
How much of this you can answer or not. Have you encountered in projects, or have you heard of people having a school board be hostile to development, adding too many students to a strapped school board? Has this come up?
I'm happy to take this one. Yeah, it comes up more than it ever used to. And we've sat recently patterned with a bunch of school superintendents and tried to understand this, because from our vantage point, it feels like they're negotiating against themselves. This region has 48,000 fewer school children than it did just 20 years ago. We've seen 53 school buildings shut down across this region in just 20 years because of that reduction in school enrollment. And so when school boards or school leaders come out against housing, it strikes us as interesting or kind of bizarre, because it seems like they're just negotiating against themselves and eventually leading toward more buildings shutting down, which tends to be like one of the most painful decisions that are made in a community. What we've come to learn, and I'm not saying this justifies their position, is that there is concern about housing that get pilot agreements, and the way that that may add demand to schools without associated revenues. There are concerns about children who have special learning needs, or I think what they call now ELL, English language learners, who, as I understand it from the superintendents, can sometimes be 4 to 5 times as costly to educate as your typical average student. And so these things have injected some kind of budgetary fear into the school districts, and they're really reacting to housing from that budgetary fear. And there again, I think that's why there needs to be open lines of communication, because frankly, their positions are deleterious to the region. We are in a position now where we're going to see the region's workforce shrink by 125,000 people or so over the next decade. And any move we make to not encourage more children is not a good move for the civic strength, workforce strength, and vibrancy of a region like ours that is really suffering from a youth shortage. So I hope that answers your question, Peg, but that's the general lay of the land I see on that.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? We have about 3 or 4 minutes left. Going once, going twice. Okay, so we're gonna end this. We're gonna wrap it up. We are gonna have a second public session coming up soon. We'll be happy to share some of the strategies that the planning team has come up with. Again, we're here talking about housing in this session, but we've put just as much work into the conservation priorities that were indicated to us at the first public meeting, and even some locations where conservation and housing could live as good, close, codependent, wonderful neighbors. So be on the lookout for that. We'll be posting this video so that members of the public can see it, and we'll continue with that project. Go ahead, Tisha.
So for anyone watching this, it is December 8th at 6 p.m. at the community center. And a lot of this meeting was how important it is to have community involvement, public engagement. I think the really important thing about this is that there is no agenda. The agenda is, this process is being led by the community who shows up. So again, show up. This is your opportunity to tell the leaders of the community what you want for housing and conservation. And it's really an open forum. The last one was great. The committee then took that information to create some of the ideas that they're going to present at this meeting. And we want a lot of different perspectives and voices at these meetings so we can then see which direction, which is then going to feed into that comprehensive plan. So please get involved. Please come out December 8th, 6 p.m. at the community center. That's my point.
Tisha makes a great point. And if you come out on December 8th, what are you going to hear? You're going to hear strategies about the sites, whether they were conservation, housing, or both, that you told us about in May. So all the things you will hear are direct derivative of the things you asked us to look into the first time around. Again, this project is totally community driven. We're just applying a little professional expertise to the ideas you gave us and then share them back with you. So we'll see you there. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.